Hello everyone, welcome to our literature class. Today is the first class of the session. My name is Miss Jenny and I'll be your teacher for literature for the whole session. I'm sure you will enjoy my class. You should all be ready to study literature and I'll put you through everything pertaining to literature. So, are you ready? I'm sure you are. Well, let's get on with it. Today we're going to be learning the introduction to literature. We're going to be introducing the concept of literature to all our students out there. So are you ready? I'm sure you are. Lesson objectives. During the course of this lesson, we're going to be learning an introduction to literature, the definitions of literature, as well as the importance of literature in English. An introduction. The study or appreciation of literature is very interesting and helpful to learners for many reasons. We have our various reasons for studying literature. Literature in English involves the reading and analysis of written materials of different kinds, including fiction and non-fiction written works in English. We read and analyze written materials that are fictional or non-fictional. Fiction meaning imagination, written out of your imagination. Non-fiction, we look at real life stories, real life books, real life articles that are written in English. This is literature in English. All learners of literature in English should be ready to analyze whatever they read critically by the end of this course. So, at the end of this course, we'll be able to understand why we read and analyze books as literature students, why we analyze them critically. Towards the end of the course, we're going to understand the concept of literature. Definitions of literature. We have a lot of definitions of literature. Literature is defined as pieces of writing that are valued as works of art, especially novels, plays, and poems. Literature is any written or non-written work of art that mirrors life. It shows us what happens in our lives and that of others. When you look at a mirror, you see your reflection. So literature is a reflection of what happens in our surroundings, in our environment, in our society, in our nation, and even in the world at large. It shows us everything that happens. We might not necessarily be there, but when we read, we are reading literature. Literature expresses the beliefs, culture/way of life of people. When we read literature, we see the culture of the writer, or the writer decides to write about a particular culture that he finds fascinating. That is literature. Through literature, we learn about the beliefs and cultures of different people around the world. When we read certain books, any non-Nigerian that reads a Nigerian text, for example, Zainab Bakali's The Virtuous Woman, we learn a little bit about the northern Nigeria. When we read There Was a Country, A Personal History of Biafra by Chinua Achebe, we are reading a little bit of the history of the eastern part of Nigeria. That is literature. We are learning about the culture and the beliefs of the Easterners or the Northerners, as in the case of all the books I just mentioned. Importance of literature. Reading and studying literature is very important for various reasons. We have a lot of reasons. 1. Literature improves your command of language. It teaches you about the life, cultures, and experiences of people in other parts of the world. Yes, when it improves your command of the language, it teaches you about life, culture, and experiences of people all over the world. It gives you information about other parts of the world which you may never be able to visit in your lifetime. You might not be opportune to visit certain countries or certain continents, but reading literature texts, literature books, we learn more about other continents, what they eat, how they live. This can be learned through literature. It entertains you and provides useful occupation in your free time. During your leisure time, you can pick up a book and read. You can pick up a newspaper or an article or an essay or a poem. When you read all these, you are occupying your time. You are not being idle. That is the importance of literature. It makes you a wiser and more experienced person by forcing you to judge, sympathize with, or criticize the characters you read about. Because as you criticize the characters or the story itself or sympathize with them, you are becoming wiser and more experienced. You're learning things that happen in your society. And when these things come up in real life, you're able to judge accordingly because you've had a little bit of experience through reading. These are some of the importance of literature. Kinds of literature. Literature has various kinds. We have the fictional and non-fictional. Fictional and non-fictional. Fictional literature is based on the writer's imagination rather than reality. Fictional literature has to do with the imagination. I sit down and imagine a supernatural world where we have machines. We live with machines. These are what we call fictional literature. For example, plays. We see so many plays, poems, short stories, novels, oral literature, and songs. Some of them are usually fictional. We have to create them out of our imagination. Non-fictional literature is factual writing or written work that gives facts that can be proved, as it provides real places, events, characters, times, or reality rather than imaginary things. In non-fictional literature, we deal with facts. We deal with real life stories. Examples include autobiographies, when you write about someone and someone writes about you. Autobiographies and biographies of somebody. That's a real life story. You're talking about that person's life. Essays, when we write essays, diaries and journals, magazines, newspapers, subject textbooks, as in geography, history, and civic education. These are all real life stories. And when we read these, we're reading non-fictional literature. That is what we call non-fictional literature. Do you understand? I'm sure you do. But if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. So, we've learned the definition of literature, the importance of literature, and the kinds of literature. So, we're going to have a little bit of home fun where you can test your knowledge of what we've done so far. So, in our evaluation, what are the examples of fictional literature, and how is literature important in the society? I need you to do this and ensure you do it well. So, in conclusion, literature, whether written or handwritten, expresses life. It is a window through which we see life and its situations. Literature can be fictional or non-fictional. In our study of literature in English, however, we shall concentrate on fictional literature as exemplified above. Fictional literature, imagination. Generally, fictional literature has to do with drama, which are plays, fiction, which are stories, and poetry, which are poems. And so, we've come to the end of our first class on an introduction to literature. I'm sure you all learned a lot and you understand what literature actually means and what literature tends to teach us. So, this is me, Miss Jenny, saying goodbye, and I'll see you in our next class. Okay? Stay safe. Bye.